Okay, so it's my turn. I'm gonna set my timer. Please let me know if I don't. Okay, so basically, I will tell you a little bit of actually. So it's great that there was Valeria and Michelle and Judith presenting different use cases. The use case I'm talking about, I'm going to present. I'm going to give a little bit of introduction, but it's basically we are starting right now. So we have had for a long time an Omero server essentially in my lab run by Alex, who is in the back of the room. And then people started asking us if they could use it. And then finally now we got the permission to start a core to provide this as a service. There are many challenges, including the fact that the institution basically is giving us no real support in terms of money. But they're happy that we are actually doing the work essentially for free. But one thing that I want to start with is this concept of what basically has been implied here is the idea of pre-publication data management as really the prelude for being able to produce data that is fair from the ground up. And so the fact of offering BioImage data management and sharing as a service, either from, in this case, we saw it as a service coming out from core facilities, either full data production core facility or a more classical core facility here. The idea is to actually have a service that is separated, and complementary to other core facilities, so that this core is not involved in directly data production, but it's about helping people with their data wherever they're producing it, whether it's from individual labs or from cores. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the work that we're doing actually with Valeria and Michelle too, and Josh is also involved to actually try to get money from UNICEF. They still have money to give to start helping each other with all the common challenges and build distributed hubs of support of each other so that we can improve the adoption. So, well, I don't have to tell you about how complex and difficult bioimages are and how it is really key to keep track of the data from all the steps. And these steps are from the sample preparation to image acquisition to image analysis. And that it's really the data management is really essential. One thing that I really want to emphasize is the aspect of pre-publication data management that happens while the people are producing their data, and to keep track of what they're doing as they're doing it, way before they have to share it. So the idea is that if people do this ahead of time during the production, then it actually benefits the data producers themselves. It's a gift to their future self. And so then we can use Omero to do that. And then that will make it much easier for them to be able to then share it as, for example, Valeria said, as described, the fact that they're already doing it through the library. For example, the Jackson Laboratory is doing it with a separate server, but basically is the idea of having these two steps really connected with each other. So the pre-publication data management is really the missing link. And what Valeria said, for example, is that a lot of people that are not in her core facility are still not reluctant to actually, or they're not really seeing the advantage of using Omero. While, for example, Michelle told you about how she has a great success story with a lot of people actually using it. But so the key is to get more people, facilitate the task of more people to get to that point so that they can actually then facilitate their sharing. And so the idea is that currently there is the current situation is already difficult enough, even without having to do data sharing, because all the pieces of what needs to be done for imaging are disconnected from each other. So even just getting all the information for publishing is difficult for people, let alone having to then share. In this case, the data and the metadata is represented as water that has to go through flow through pipes. But there are, if the pipes are missing, then the data doesn't flow and gets stuck somewhere. So if you actually have a platform that allows you to connect all these different components, then you're able to publish more papers, so that even just without having to share, you still are actually, your work is facilitated. But then if you actually do facilitate the task of sharing, then you actually are able to produce even more papers, and then other people will use the data even more papers. So these are the kind of things that we are talking with users, so that, and it's actually, we find that it is actually quite resonating with a lot of them. So the idea here is, okay, so we need to bring back what a lot of people are doing in this community and others to what the people on the bench are doing, and make sure that they are connected with each other. So the idea is to provide a service that is connected with the community to continue research and development and facilitate, and contribute to that task, empower and increase awareness, and then provide the whole service as a service. Sorry, the whole package as a service whenever it's ready to be provided, when it's ready to be used. So the lesson learned that we had, I want to put at the beginning, is that so there has to really be value added and ease of use in order for people to be willing to shift to a new way of doing things, even though it might end up facilitating their task, and then when they're doing it, they're very happy about it. It still has to be upfront what the advantage has to be for them. And the other thing is that it's really important to make sure that there is some support locally, so that you can build solutions that are actually helping each individual lab, and is not cookie cutter, because if cookie cutter solution may not be sufficient. So, and people may just balk, and they don't see the advantage of it. So, so then imposing the idea of imposing standards or imposing solutions doesn't really work. And of course, as much automation, like for example, imported automation and metadata annotation as possible. Another thing that, like with other people, also Michelle has said, that people are actually very interested in how have a way of organizing and find their data. Young PIs, but also sometimes PIs that have been around for a while and have an experience of having data in the past and want to have a better solution. Being able to see their students' data right away, so instead of waiting for weeks to be able to see what they actually acquired, and making figures. So we find also that the manual import and annotation are big showstoppers. If people have to do it, they may not do it. So the question, so the really important piece has to be automated import from the site of production. And, like connected with the fact of customization and building solutions is the need of have something that works. So having seed funding is really key, so that you can actually build something that works before you actually try to get people to use it. The other thing that we learned is that storage and backup, at least at our institution, were not at all solved issues. So people actually even said, okay, we would love to organize our data, but what about actually providing some solutions for cheap and affordable storage and backup? And when we spoke with IT about backup of image data, the thing is that they were used to doing backup for, at max administrative kind of data, so like tiny amounts. And so, we actually have been using this conversation to actually advocate for people that even if they don't want to use Omero, to have ways of storing and backing up their data. The other thing that was really useful for us was that we realized that there was no data governance policies of any kind. And we learned from Valeria that that's something that they had, a conversation that they had at NYU. So we used this opportunity to talk about it and started developing some, at least, guidance for the university to how long do they have to preserve their data. So none of these things had been addressed by the university. And the other thing is allies. So IT personnel, in our case, were extremely eager to help and really understood very well what we were trying to do. The problem is really the higher up stakeholders and the ways that in which things are decided higher up to that might create issues. So and I think what we are hoping is that by having more and more users, then we will be able to get to the higher up stakeholders. For now, but it's good to know that the IT personnel themselves are very eager to help us. The librarians are also very big allies here. And if you have like some kind of research computing or research informatics office or group of people in your institution, they tend to understand much better what is needed, and it can really be useful as an ally to bridge the gap between the needs that the research scientists and the higher up stakeholders, because they tend to have ways of talking with management that might not be immediately obvious to you. So this is there are. I don't need to go through too much of this. Yeah. Okay. I still have 5 minutes. Okay. The challenges for the institution. I mean, this slide actually was inspired, as you can see, from Valeria, who was definitely very helpful for us to think about how to approach the institution. So people kind of I didn't find that very useful for us to make these cases. I think that the main usefulness the main thing that will move us forward, I think, is the fact that there are challenges for researchers that we are trying to solve. And then when the researchers will see that there is an advantage, then they will talk with them. So for us, the management itself was not such so the challenges at the level of how the data duplication and other things would affect the institution didn't really help all that much. But one of the things that is really a big challenge that we have already had feedback that Omero is really helping is the fact of finding of not losing your data when people move on from your lab. This is really a key thing. And then the fact that if, as an added value, this bioimage data management and sharing core can help with storage and helping people decide, who is responsible for maintaining, for keeping the data, and all of these things are really important. So another thing that has been really useful for us has been the fact that there has been an incentive from people, a little bit from the institution. We're not at the level of UNC that is the institution really understood what kind of real challenge this poses to them. There is some understanding, but it hasn't translated into putting money into it. But this definitely has improved our ability to talk about these things in a more productive way with everybody involved. So obviously, in our case, we are using Omero as our central repository for keep putting all of these aspects together. And in our case, also the journey has been a long journey. We started from the lab, a server that was in the Strambio lab. And then other people started asking us to use it because they saw that it could be useful for them to organize the data. And now we're going to launch our core. So we will see how that goes. We definitely had, one of the things that helped get approval for this was that there was definitely interest from the user base. And these are the kind of services that we want to try to provide. Okay, I am out of time, so I will stop here. And please, we can have this further discussion, and if you have any questions.
Caterina, can I ask a question? So a core has to deliver value, as what you've said, and that there's a certain transaction there. One thing that I was just reflecting on some of the things in your talk, one of the things that we've seen in IDR, and this recapitulates, I think, Matt, you can ask Matthew about this. Shuichi would be interesting to get their perspective. It's also true in data sets from genomics. It's very hard to predict which data sets people are going to access and really reuse heavily. So data sets go into repositories, and the ones that become popular over time for whatever reason are very hard to predict. If there's a bit of a contract with your investigators that you're going to improve my effectively my my impact, my publication stats, because you're going to publish my data, and people are going to enjoy that. Actually, there's this, if the reality is that stochastic, I wonder if there's a danger there, that you're offering something that may work out but might not.
I think the value that I'm talking about for people is not that value, because that value is too far away for most people to. Okay. It's more the value of, will this help my everyday life right now? Okay. So it is, and then the added value, I mean, additional value could end up being that their data, then they can improve. I think if you promise impact, increased impact, most people, I mean, this is a very good reason why that doesn't make sense, but there is other reasons why, including the fact that, it's too far away and I don't have to worry about it right now. Right now, I'm worrying about what I need to do to get this data
more on the patient.
And yes, the data management and sharing policy has raised this awareness that eventually we'll have to do it, but most people are still in the phase in which they're hoping that will go away. And so, and in the institution, even though there was definitely understanding that would make sense, still it wasn't enough to push some actual seed funding for the. So basically, you try to do it. If you're successful, great. So, and I'm a little bit unfair because, I mean, support, so the people that we talk to provide a lot of support, and they think it's very important. That doesn't necessarily translate to the upper stakeholders and figure out whether they are actually going to open that first. But so I think most people are definitely more aware of the longer term consequences if they don't organize their data. But I think what is even more than what impact it is, it's more like a stick that might be there. The fact that there's going to be added value, so the carrot post sharing, I think is for most people is still a little bit fuzzy, and it's more like in the realm of wishful thinking. But I think the real important added value is what happens to help them organize their data as they are doing the experiments and reducing that pain. Everybody knows the pain. they are used to that pain, so they are maybe reluctant to move to another type of pain. But so that's why you need to provide them with something that is not painful or that has a very strong promise of not being painful so that they are willing to try it. The people that have tried it are super happy with it. And I remember us saying, would you be interested in integrated analysis? Well, yes, that would be good, but it seems difficult for me just to find the data. It would be amazing. So I hope this answers your question. Or, about any of the talks?
Yeah, the only question was for.
Can you raise your voice?
Yeah, sorry, Judith mentioned all the quality control and there is the term workflow was used. So I don't know if is it something that is it in the end going to be made publicly available, a collection of those QA workflow. And related to that, because a lot of the work is done associated to some microscope, and I think that also will be beneficial for people when they are trying to see what they can find in terms of public resources. Is the intent to put some of the QA you have done, maybe not for all data set, but some as a public reference, similar to, we're talking about public repository of IDR, but in that case of QA technique for images.
Yes, so can you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
Super. So, well, fantastic presentation, everybody. Thank you. Yes, so the idea is to make those workflow available. I've been doing it a bit in an amateur way for several years, but there are tools that I saw recently at in Europe where people are coming really well organized with adapting such practices. So hopefully, yes, the idea is to make the workflows as available as much as the raw data and the metadata input and output. It's important.
I was going to note, one of the places as an instrument-based training core, we've seen a lot of use of Omero is during consultations, if it's a project that's ongoing, having reference data, we have them upload it to Omero because then we can access it from both the image acquisition and my desktop. And then they're not storing it on my image acquisition ones. They can do a local download and then everything in downloads is wiped when they log out. But that allows them to reuse settings, whereas otherwise they can't both visualize and have the original metadata with it easily. And so that had been a way that we were able to get more of that data in, is like before your consultation, upload what you have from your collaborator or otherwise, and then we can directly compare. So as they're acquiring it, are you getting about the right image quality? Are you acquiring a similar image than you were before? So it helped our consultations and trainings run a little more effectively instead of them going back to their PI and their PI was like, great, that was a totally different resolution than we wanted you to acquire at. And so that helped too.
Question for you all, when they set up our instance of Omero at our institution, which I had no responsibility for, the decision was made is that no clinical data whatsoever could be in Omero. We have a way, for example, we have a research group that is doing skin lesions, and they use the REDCap record number to connect it to that. How do you handle clinical data in your institutions with Omero?
And I only go like that because up until now,
so I'm just gonna talk about pathology data. It was completely, so the way we put data in Omero is we say it has to be de-identified, completely de-identified. So either the slides, if there were physical slides coming from the clinic, we would make sure to cover the label before going into the scanner. The other way that clinician researchers did a lot of their was to request blocks. And then we have a particular core, the CBRD, that de-identifies each block. They do new sections. There's a completely new ID that they only have the key to locate back to the record. So those images can go into a. Now, the challenge is that our whole institution has moved every pathology lab to digital pathology. And so that's, that's the challenge of, okay, getting a proper de-identification tool that actually doesn't render the data useless but at the same time. And there's a lot of reticence to, there's a lot of complication, but right now it's completely de-identified. Now, having said that, I don't know if there's a rando person over there uploading whatever they want, because there's no way for me to check every single image and figure this out, but they, that is what we say. Yeah. We also have no clinical data, or it would be de-identified, but we've talked about making a separate server that would be behind a different firewall. The thing that to me sounds promising about that is RedCap has its own system of metadata is actually known, and they've already had to have requests of how big will their data set be. And so it actually becomes easier to maintain each project because it's much more tightly controlled on one side. It just means having a different firewall and having it separately. The ingest will be different. But I actually thought IT-wise, it might be a little bit simpler to set up because it was more known per project what the estimated data size would be, and all of the metadata is much more streamlined.
But I will say one thing though, that maybe for developers might be a challenge, is that a lot of the research moves towards clinical samples, where you want the clinical H&E slides, you want whatever the diagnosis from the pathologist was, but then you want to do a high-end, super resolution fish experiment, and then map those two slides together and get that data. And so my concern with separating servers for the clinical non-de-identified and then these high-end experiments that are thousands of dollars is that you also kind of lose that way of interacting with the data and the data sets. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm concerned about that separation.
I guess, my thought is that in many cases, the pathology department, the cancer center, they would be people that might be able to drive an Omero adoption, but that becomes a difficult hurdle when you say you have to de-identify stuff. And I don't know the answer.
I think we need to continue this discussion in the break. I just wanted to conclude with as one slide. I'm going to talk about what the proposals for a non-meeting will be here, and I came up with. And so one is the cost sharing consortia for Omero development. If anybody is interested in discussing about that, the idea of using RANDI as a framework for building sustainable bottom-up metadata standards, the unifying our work around metadata standard. But the other thing is also about using as the next generation metadata schema, as suggested by some of the presentation of Josh. LinkML could be part of the community of the metadata stack as a schema, for example, for Rocrate. There is William Rosenstapp is here, who has been doing some work together with his colleague Effie Estrugo, on moving and MBOQ presentation to the email. So if you want to talk to him, and then we can definitely like have a discussion about that on Friday. Okay.
Caterina, are those on the board?
I will put
Good.
one of them is on the board, and then I'll put the other. Okay. Thank you so much. And there is coffee now, and then we started it again at 11.